Well, the first thing is that you're not broken and you don't need to be fixed.
Mm,
It's more about self discovery than even personal development, right? It's like discovering who you are, learning about who you are, and that it's an inside job. It's an inside job. It's not for anyone else to tell you, give you, help, make it all better. If you're not happy and satisfied in your relationship, bring it inward. What can you do to feel better within yourself? We can't pour from an empty cup.
let's turn our attention inward and explore the thoughts and emotions that shape our experiences and discover how to live with more awareness and intention. I'm David Dawson, and this is Interaction. Kate Strong, thank you for joining me today. I am eager to know, even before we hit record, the amount of information that you're dumping on me in the best way. I'm like, ooh, we need to hit record. We need to stop this conversation. So I know that there'll be a lot of information that people could take away today.
Mhm.
And one thing from my last episode that I recorded, the gentleman was mentioning whatever pings for you, whatever creates any sort of stir of emotion in the episode that you're listening to, that is kind of your doorway to start to explore. So I'm want to kind of extend that off to anyone listening to this episode.
Mhm.
If there's a topic or anything that Kate says today that resonates with you, that use that as kind of your way to start to find new meaning and depth in your life. So, but before we begin, let's do the icebreaker.
Let's do it.
Do you like to draw?
I'm no, but I'm totally open to exploring and new opportunities. I
Good.
will mostly do anything at least once.
All right. Well, you might just be one and done after this one. We'll see. Okay, I'm going to stop there.
Okay.
What do I look like?
This is awesome. Oh, you're good. You've been doing this.
I look
for a while.
like a monkey.
I
think.
started off kind of good.
No, you
This
did. No, that's
just-
great. You started. You did it. That's
It's like
what's
the-
important.
Look at your jawline.
It's handsome. It's very chiseled.
Chiseled.
You look so surprised.
I look like Marge on Simpsons.
Yes. Oh wow. Well, thanks for
This is fun.
doing that exercise with me today. So, Kate, let's start off on this very first question.
Okay.
What is your current relationship with yourself like?
Current. I have a daily self-care practice that I check in with myself every day. And what I know for sure is I'm not just my physical body. I'm four bodies. So my physical body, but my mental body, my emotional body, and my spiritual body. So for a long time in my life, I just saw myself as physical, right? Like self-care meant physical self-care. How do I take care of myself physically? Everything on the outside. And I had this moment where I realized that my self-care was pretty superficial. Now listen, I love the nails, the hair, the all the things. I like to be able to look in my reflection in the mirror and feel as vibrant as I feel inside. But what I realized one day was that like it just wasn't scratching the surface. You know what I mean? It was like this is only skin. It's like skin
Deep.
skin deep.
Yes,
Right?
there's no depth to it.
Yeah. And so I got into this mental wellness, mental health kick years ago before it was actually popular, when we were still psychoanalyzing people and thinking that there was something wrong and therapy wasn't cool, But it allowed me to really check in with myself and notice like what's going on in my mind, what's the story playing in my head, and I started studying and learning under Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton, two of my favorites, the absolute favorites. And I see you
I
smiling
like
over
Joe
there.
Dispenza
'Cause-
for sure. Yeah.
Yes. And I learned that the power of my thoughts, and that if I could master my mind, I could master my life. And so I have daily self-care practice around that, around my thoughts, my minds. I have a timer that I set on my phone that says check in. And I just check in what's going on between my two ears, what's going on in my mind. Sometimes I'll find like, wow, there's a lot going on, especially at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when it's just been like input, 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 input. So in fact, my favorite time to do a little quiet, silent meditation is in the afternoon. So I can just silence the noise and kind of push reset.
How long does that take?
2 minutes max.
Oh, wow.
Here's the thing. A lot of times when we talk about the self-mastery program that I take clients through and I work through, a lot of people have this conception that, oh my gosh, Kate, what you do, it sounds like it takes so long. It doesn't. It doesn't take long at all. I focus on all four of those pillars, that my physical body, my mental body, my emotional body, and spiritual body every day for 30 minutes or less. Every day. It's about getting so clear and intentional of like what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And oftentimes we're thinking about the thing for so long that it feels like it took all day or we're spending all day on it, but it's just because we're just kicking the ball down the road. And it's like, what if you just did it? Right? Like, what if you just like did it? So I check in with my mind, like clearing out my mind, what's going on in my thoughts, what's going on in what is here. And Dr. Joe Dispenza says we think 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, 90% are the same. 90%. So the dialogue in our head is on repeat, right? And if you want to change your reality, if you want to change your life, you have to change your thoughts because your life is the quality of your thoughts. So the quality of my thoughts is much better. I have more compassion. I'm able to see what's happening in my mind from a bird's eye perspective because I'm not just my mind. It's part of me. It's a fourth of the four bodies, but it's not who I am, who I be. And so that's helped a ton because it keeps me out of a shame and guilt cycle. I should have known better. I can't believe I'm here again. And I used to do that for most of my life until I learned that I'm a human being having this experience. My mind is on autopilot. You know, our subconscious has two functions. The first is to keep you safe. The second is to prove you right. So go back to that 90% where we're thinking 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and they're here to keep us safe and prove us right. Well, no wonder you don't start that thing that feels intimidating, right? It's like, I might fail. I might look dumb.
Yeah, there's too much risk.
Yes. So we stay safe. We play it safe. But then the other piece to this is that the subconscious, the second function is to prove you right. So you will find evidence for whatever it is that you're seeking and looking for. Always. Absolutely always. If you think that you were left out of an invite to go somewhere, that will be the story, right? That you were actually left out, that they didn't care about you, that you know, this happens all the time and here it is again. And so you withdraw and avoid and don't have the conversation. And then you create the distance that you were in fear of from the very, right? So we have these self-sabotaging behaviors and these things that we do, but learning about that and being able to witness myself instead of criticize myself, self-compassion's been really great. So I have a lot more self-compassion for myself. I am a perfectionist. I'm a high achiever and I am very much in a growth mindset. So it feels like I'm always like, oh, I could have done a little better. If I did that again, how would I do that? So it doesn't negate that, but what it does is it keeps me out of like shame and criticism, and that feels healthy. So that's the second thing that I do every day, and my relationship with myself mentally, but emotionally, that piece of it has been really tender and sweet. You know, Dr. Brene Brown says that we have 82 emotions. 82. Can you even think of like 20?
I have Atlas of the Heart.
That's
have that
the one.
book. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's such a good book. But yeah, if ever I want more information about a specific emotion, I can go
Yes.
go in there and learn a lot.
Yeah.
But
So most of our lives, we've learned, hey, how are you? I'm good. Fine. Okay.
yeah.
Happy, sad, angry. Basic
10.
emotions. Yeah. 10 to 12, right? And so as I've learned to really sit with my emotions and not be afraid of it, not be scared, it's like they're indicators for something. It's like if something's coming up, okay, what am I feeling? Number one, I have a process called SNAP. You just stop in the moment. Just stop. Okay, what's going on? What am I feeling? Okay. Notice, what was I just thinking about? Was I just thinking about, okay, is that true? And then you get to pivot and think a better feeling thought or a more true thought. But again, that emotional piece is tied to the mental piece.
Mm.
So learning how to navigate what I'm feeling based off what I'm thinking, based off of what my circumstances, and letting myself just fully fall apart. I've found, I don't know about you, but the longer I stuff the emotion and the longer I keep it in, it doesn't go away. It just becomes explosive, right? It's like I was
Yeah.
talking to a client today, and he's been a people pleaser most of his life, and recovering addict. He's 30 years old. For 15 years of his life, he's been addicted and in and out of rehabs. And he's done, his parents have invested more money in him than you can imagine on the best things he could do. And his mom reached out to me and said, we want to try some medicine coaching. We want to do something different. And I said, okay, let's do it. And today we had a conversation and he got angry and like projected this anger onto his grandpa. And his whole family was like, is this thing working? What are you doing? Like, I don't know. It feels like maybe he's digressing. He went backwards. And no, he's actually he's allowing himself to be angry. He's been a people pleaser. So he's gone and numbed with a substance. So now here he is allowing himself to feel what's coming up. Well, of course he's feeling what he came up. His
Yeah.
grandpa's saying all kinds of stuff that is not appropriate, that is not okay, that everyone's excusing because, oh, well, he's 85. So he just has dementia. He just doesn't know. Okay, well, you can feel angry about that. That's okay. And then like, how do you navigate that anger through? And I've been working on something recently in myself and with him. It was cool today. So I have this theory that if we can identify where the emotion is in the body, if you can identify where do I feel it in my body, oftentimes anger is somewhere in the belly. It's like fiery. It's in the belly. The solar plexus is just below your ribs. So usually it's your personal power. You feel anger because anger is an action. Anger is saying you need to do something. Enough is enough. I'm over this. This isn't okay anymore. I need to create a boundary. I've been pushed too far. So anger is actually really healthy for us. It doesn't mean we need to go project it onto someone else, but what we can do is, and this is my thought, you take the anger from the solar plexus and you filter it through the heart. And when you filter it or organize it through the heart, then it can come up to the throat and you can speak it in a way that people will be receptive of what you have to say. But if you bypass the heart and it just comes out, the anger just comes out, it's not organized, it's not filtered through the heart chakra, the energy of the heart. And so it can come out as being like offensive or not being received because all the other person can hear is a projection of like anger.
What does the filtering look like? Because I mean,
Mm,
is this are you imagining kind of like
mhm,
there's the awareness,
mhm,
like, oh, I'm feeling something.
mhm,
Okay, this
mhm,
is happening in my
mhm,
stomach.
mhm,
And then being able to take that pause and then say, okay, instead of doing what I normally do, which might be to suppress it or to project it and create some sort of collateral damage in that
mhm,
process.
mhm.
w- I mean, what's that process look like? The filtering.
I love this. I'm literally in the process of navigating this right now, so I appreciate the opportunity to
Yeah.
talk through it because this is how I do this, the process. So here's everything I do. I measure on a scale of 0 to 10. Okay, how am I feeling physically today? 0 to 10. 10's amazing. Zero's like not great. How am I feeling? What's going on mentally? Do I have a lot of racing thoughts, or is it kind of like quiet and still 0 to 10? So I do the same thing, and I would suggest to do the same thing here. Is don't wait until the anger's at the 10, right? If 0 is peace or calm and 10 is anger, don't wait until the anger is so much at a 10 that you're going, oh, what's going on here? So you have to get quiet enough and be in tune enough with listening to your body to say, what is the very beginning of anger feel like? Okay. So where is it in my body? And then what does it feel like? What's going on? And then you notice and go, okay, I'm feeling something. All right. So what is true? You have to ask yourself in that moment, what is true? Okay. So I'm going to give the client example here for a moment. The truth is, his grandfather said something really rude about his girlfriend's weight. Okay. Not okay.
Oh.
Not kind. Right. So the truth is, he's feeling like this isn't okay. Right. This is rude. It's not kind. Great. All of those things are accurate. So, how can he filter it through his heart? Would be to take what was said and bring it through the heart and ask yourself, how can I deliver? How can I speak this truth? How can I say this out loud in a way that it would be received? Well, you and I both know that if we're going to talk in any way to have someone receive something, the best thing we can do is ask them questions and help them get into that person's shoes, right? So filtering it through the heart could be something like, hey, when you said that, I started feeling angry inside. I wanted to be protective. I wanted to say, don't you talk to my girlfriend like that. And I felt like all of this stuff come up inside of me. And because I love you and I want to have a good, healthy relationship with you, I don't want to manifest and let you feel everything that's going on inside of me. But it's important for me to be able to express that this is not okay. And that I'm actually not okay with you ever talking about her like that, ever with me here or in front of her ever. So it doesn't mean that you just become meek and quiet and don't do anything. Remember, the anger is saying you need to say something, you need to do something. There's an action that needs to happen, but the heart filters it in a way that you can deliver it in a way that it would be received. So another thing, and again, I'm exploring this, I'm working on it currently, like this is real time. The other piece I feel like would be really helpful here is to ask the person, how would you feel if someone fill in the blank? I don't know if this is true, but I'm just assuming he's 85, he has dementia. What if he's like, I don't know, I'm sure there are plenty of things that he could pick out that this man is doing that are kind of embarrassing, or like, well, let's talk about the fact that your skin is flabby and you're old and you're like, you have bad breath and you're drooling, but we don't do that because we love you. So, you know what I mean? So I feel like making it personal and being able to go through that. And again, this is so like fresh and is active in me right now because I've been having some of my own righteous anger. And I've been navigating, how do I not project the anger in a way that falls on deaf ears, because no one is going to receive anything that's said if we're yelling at someone or if our voice is raised. But how do I own that and channel that and filter it through my heart so that I can still speak with confidence and clarity and being empowered, but not coming from a place of force, like you listen to me, or control, but coming from a place of clear confidence and saying, this doesn't work for me. And what we're really doing is creating a boundary. And my definition of a boundary is very different than most. A boundary in my world is an internal agreement with myself.
Internal agreement.
So that doesn't mean I'm going around saying, you don't talk to me like that and you're not going to do this, because can we control anyone else? No. We can request it. I can say like, I would appreciate if you didn't do that, or if you do that, I'm going to leave. But you can't control if someone does something else or not, right? That's like the force. That's me coming back at you and using the control that you were trying to use, right? It's just another version of the same thing. It's the same coin, just the other side. But what I can do is I can say to myself, okay, if I'm in a situation where someone's being really disrespectful and rude, I'm going to dismiss, I'm leaving, or I'm not going to engage with that. But I don't have to go in and say, if you do this, I'm going to, right? You just leave, or whatever it is. But it's more of like, it's really an act of not betraying myself, because I think a lot of times we're in self-betrayal to keep the peace.
Oh, I can speak on that.
Right? We all do it. We've been taught that. We've been taught, you be a good boy. You be a good girl. You just sit still. You be quiet. You don't say anything. We've been taught that since we were little. So to now be so like, okay, with allowing ourselves to be big and emotional and like have all the emotions. And then for women, if you show too many emotions, she's crazy.
She's too much.
Yeah, she's too much. And then for men, it's you actually wear a mask. Don't you show any emotion, and the only emotion you can show is anger. Men are okay to be in their anger. Women aren't. But men can't be sensitive, right? They can't be gentle. They can't be soft. So there's a lot of paradigms and there's a lot that's been laid over us and what it looks like to be a good boy or a good girl, but we've been suppressing parts of ourselves. We've been literally denying pieces of ourselves and being in self-betrayal. And I believe that that piece of self-betrayal is the thing that keeps us um, separate from ourselves, which is my fourth pillar of self-mastery, which is spiritual. And the spiritual piece is not something outside of you. We've been taught a lot that it is outside of us, that the gateway to eternal life, heaven, grace, atonement, whatever it is all outside of ourselves. It's like, well, I'm going to ask, I'm going to pray, well, what if your higher self, what if your soul within you is all knowing and you're completely whole and enough? And what if we turn down the outside volume or the noise on the outside and turn up the intuition and our internal voice and really listen to like, this is what's best for me. And what I believe is that we all have a unique design and imprint and blueprint of what that spiritual version of ourselves is. And this is why when we're seeking other people's opinions, ideas, it never feels like it quite, it's like, almost like that, almost, that sounds so good, but like, why isn't it working for me the same way it is for her? Or why am I not succeeding the way that he's having success? We're doing the same things. Well, there's an internal piece that's missing, and it's your own divine blueprint. It's that piece. So it requires getting quiet. It requires practicing and listening and really tuning in. It's funny. I was religious. I'm not anymore, but it's interesting because the Judeo-Christian, there's still a lot of things that I'm finding now that I'm going back of like, wait a second, I kind of like that, or like, I'd like to redefine that. And the most recent one has been this thing around a still small voice, which is fascinating. That still small voice is there and it's within. It's not outside, it's within. And it is small and it is still. And I get to be still and quiet to hear it. And the more I practice it, the louder it gets. Now my belly literally will catch on fire. And I'm like, that's a no. But it wasn't always that way. Like there was a lot in the beginning of like, is that a yes? Is that a no? Like I believe we're all human pendulums. You know what a pendulum is? Have you ever seen those, right?
Yeah,
The yes,
swing.
the no. I believe that we can create that within our own body. It's just a matter of learning, what is my yes? What is my no? How do I tune into that? How do I listen? And the more we step into like, I'm going to trust this and it's accurate, then it's like, okay. It's like a muscle, right? It's like building that spiritual muscle within. So long story, squirrely Kate, which you're going to get this, the manifesting generator in me. This is how we go, y'all. Are you ready for the ride? Hold on. We'll get back there eventually. How is my relationship with myself?
Yeah.
Something like that. It's really good. I think it's healthy. You know, I'm like any of us. We have ups and downs. Like life isn't always rainbows and unicorn. And I think that's the lie that we tell ourselves. And so then when it's not, we're like, oh, what am I doing wrong? I must be being punished, or I must have not done good enough, or I must not be enough. Maybe I'm not worthy.
I was gonna bring that up.
What if instead you're on the roller coaster, babe? Hold on. There's going to be ups and downs, and we're going to flip upside down, and you're on the ride. Like here we are. And one of my favorite reframes is Gabrielle Bernstein, The Universe Has Your Back, one of the most pivotal, life-changing books I've ever read in my life. And
that's the title. That's the book.
The title is The Universe Has Your Back.
All right.
And if we have time, I can tell you a little story about that. But she says, what if you ask yourself or say, instead of why is this happening to me, you ask, how is this happening for me? And that line in the book literally changed my life 7 years ago in the coolest way ever, that I continually go back to that of like, okay, if I truly believe that everything is happening for me, that the universe, God's conspiring in my behalf, it will never look the way that we thought it would look. Coming back to expectations, right? It's like those expectations make us think we're doing it wrong. Yeah. We're not getting it right because it doesn't look the way we thought it was going to look. But letting go of that and looking for like the good of like, how could this be happening for me? You start seeing the evidence. You start seeing like it almost becomes game-like. You're like, okay, How's this happening for me? I'm looking for the evidence for the good thing to happen instead of, remember, the subconscious brain wants to prove us right. So if I believe it's happening to me, I'll get plenty of evidence. And the story for me, which why we're here, I'll give it. I think it was about 7 years ago. My ex-husband had gone to jail, and about 3 weeks later, my house flooded. So my mom called me and she said, "Come home now. There's an emergency." And my heart was pounding. My youngest was like 4 years old. I had a 7, 9, and 12-year-old, single mom. And I walk into my house and the ceilings are on the floor, literally ceilings on the floor. The water's like 3 to 4 inches up on my feet. I'm looking and seeing toys ruined, pictures of my family, like my house is flooded. And I walked outside and I'd been reading this book and I was like, how is this happening for me? How? I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. And my girlfriend came over and she's like, "I'm so sorry. Like, one more thing. Like, literally, when it rains, it pours." And I was like, okay, all right, rain, water, okay, symbolism, just looking. So the restoration company came over, and after they did the assessment, we were sitting down, and he said, "Okay, so what carpet do you want?" And I was like, "I don't even know where to get that carpet anymore. Like, we've lived here for like 12 years. I don't even know." He goes, "What? You don't have to get the same carpet. You can pick out whatever you want." I was like, "Huh?" He goes, "Yeah, you have a budget. You can get whatever you want." So this is the interesting thing. I was living in the same house I had lived in when I was married the entire time and when I got divorced. And my divorce was not an amicable, happy one, right? And there was some trauma that I had experienced in that home. And I wanted to move. And I wanted to move from the day we got divorced, but I felt like, how do I get divorced and my kids go through that? And then now their dad's in jail. Everyone on my support team, my therapist, my divorce coach, my co-parent coach were like, "You can't put your kids through that. Like, they've been through too much." But yet I was getting traumatized every time I was pulling into my neighborhood and going back home. So in that moment, how is this happening for me? I was like, wait, I'm going to get to redo my house and not have to move. I can live here and still be here, and I can paint it a different color, and I can have different carpet, and I can like redo this house. And as I am aware of this, then I start to get rid of all the stuff, right? That's wet, and I'm purging things, I'm letting go of things. There's memories, I'm crying, I'm having this whole spiritual experience of releasing, letting go. And then I'm like, oh, it's April, and this is water, and it's rain, and it's purifying, cleansing, renewal. So it's a pretty cool thing that we as humans can do, is like, you can literally just ask yourself, how is this happening for me? And be curious versus, I'm convinced and I'm sure that this is happening to me. It's a big difference there. One is open, the other's like, I already know.
Yeah, closed off, restricted.
Yes. But that's been one of the biggest mantras that has still today. You know, when I'm in the dark, if you're listening to this and you're in the dark and you're thinking 2024 has been hard and there's still more coming, and how am I going to make it? Or why is this happening to me? I just invite you to shift that and to just ask yourself, how could this be happening for me? Even if you don't believe it is, you don't have to believe. You can just start staying curious, ask yourself, how could this be happening for me? And see if you can start to see some of the little miracles or some of the things that are actually gifts or blessings. It just looks totally different than you think.
That's so big. I've heard that. You know, how is this happening for me? And I, I'm I can agree to the fact that, like, you know, something that I feel is pretty natural for me to do is to be like, okay, rather than get completely succumbed by whatever the situation is, it's like, okay, well, you know, life is happening in such a way that it's telling me that whatever I'm doing currently needs to be changing. And so this is a bit of a I mean, for some people listening, this might be triggering. Like it could be considered a gift, but a gift you didn't know you wanted. That's giving you paper cuts along the way as you're, maybe like opening it. But at the same time, to me, that allows for possibility to start entering your life versus completely blocking and looking at everything as a threat
Mhm.
and being closed off to anything that's wanting to come into your life. So, man, that is great first question. Thank you for answering that.
Yes.
Okay, so you're a spiritual coach.
Yeah.
How does that differ than a life coach?
This is a great question. I've been and could still consider myself a life coach, right? I recently shifted that to a spiritual coach because number one, I want to call in clients and people who are ready to really, really tap into their own intuition, their own inner voice, their own wisdom, the wisdom within. I mentioned this earlier. Um, I'm very aligned with anyone who wants to work in the space of turning down the outside noise and turning up the volume on your own intuition. And this is the fourth pillar that I got to. So it was my own journey, right? I started with the physical, the outside. I think most people do that. It's like, okay, I need to work out. I need to drink more water. I need to go to sleep, get more sleep. I need to hydrate, right?
It's what's advertised to us.
Totally. It's the first step. That's where I started. Totally started with that. But as I did this practice called yoga, and this is back before it was cool, y'all. This is like the first yoga studio I helped open in Orem, and there were no other yoga studios around here. And it's been through 3 or 4 different owners and has a new name now. But this is back in the day. This is like a decade ago. Yoga introduced me to the 4 bodies. Yoga taught me that it's not just my physical body, but what's happening to my mind during yoga. I'm crying on my mat, purging old energy, old things that are coming up. Which another little caveat and side note is I believe, and I'm not a doctor, I will say that here, but I want to be very clear and bold in saying that if we do not allow ourselves to feel the emotions, we will store them in our body and they will manifest themselves as dis-ease in the body.
Oh, yeah.
So with that, I'm purging on my mat. I'm crying on my mat. I'm in positions in my body's feeling pain and I'm asking it, what is this? And all it's coming up. And I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And so the emotional piece came up in yoga, but then also the spiritual piece. And where this came for me was I was laying on my mat, and this is probably a couple of years into my yoga practice. And again, I had left organized religion. And when I left, I threw it all away. I was like, I don't even know what's real. I don't like that God. I don't know. I'm starting from scratch. I don't even know. Maybe I'm agnostic. I don't know. But I was laying in Shavasana one day on my mat and I just heard this, voice, if you will, or this inner knowing that said, Kate, you might not be religious, but you are very spiritual. And I just opened up to some different opportunities. Like you said, when things came my way, it was like, does this feel like a yes or no? I'm leaning in. So I went through a shaman training. And I don't call myself a shaman, although technically I guess I could. For me, it feels like, how dare I be this white woman calling myself a shaman after I worked with this indigenous Native American, the Lakota tribe, and received the 13 rites of the Munai Ki. And I work with all of that, but I just still feel like I'm a white girl from Alabama who didn't grow up in that culture. So to call myself a shaman, I call myself a medicine woman. And I learned a lot of different spiritual tools that were, really helpful for me. How to look at synchronicities and animals as like the spirit and the meaning of different animals, and working with the moon cycles and working with my own cycle and working with astrology. And like, wow, all of this stuff is beautifully orchestrated in such a spiritual way. So that opened me up to the spiritual part of it. And I was doing it on my own. But again, the physical, mental, and emotional were a little more dialed in, and the spiritual was still kind of like ethereal and not quite sure. I also have had a lot of things bubble up in my own world around patriarchy and religion and things like that, and have wanted to be respectful of other people's beliefs. So it took me a while to kind of navigate, how do I communicate about this in a really assertive, clear way, but also be respectful and not try to be offensive around that. And so the spiritual piece, I believe, is the highest and the most, I'm going to say it, elevated space that any of us can get into. When we get to a place where we can literally get our body to be healthy and well, get our minds to be healthy and well, and get our emotions to be fluid and moving through us, that then opens up this spiritual part of ourselves that is truly our higher self. And when we can start to listen to that inner wisdom, everything in your life will change, literally everything in your life. So back to me being a spiritual coach, I work with a lot of people who are leaving organized religion and helping them navigate how to turn on their light again, how to trust and listen to themselves after outsourcing for so long. And again, this is I still practice a lot of Judeo-Christian things. It's part of my lineage. I also use those rites of the Munai Ki. I'm under a program called the Embodied House of Metamorphosis, where we use psilocybin and medicine to activate a lot of these things. And there's a lot of different tools and resources that come in. And the spiritual part of it isn't about being anti anything and giving power to that still, but instead bringing it all back. It's like, what do you have control over? The only thing you can control is yourself. You are the problem and the solution.
I'm trying to figure out where I want to, what part of what you just said I want to like dive into here, because that is okay. So let's go back just a second. I grew up LDS, and it's been interesting because I can remember it's, the messaging is to, pray, get your own confirmation, and to be, basically worthy of the Holy Ghost or the Spirit in order to then testify to whatever it is or to help you navigate your life. So how how do you find that to be a little blurry? Because I know that people that are listening, even my parents or whatever, like, they're still very active. And so for them to maybe listen in on this stuff, they might not quite get or see how that doesn't relate or that doesn't fit or jive. So could you maybe expand on what you mean by that?
Absolutely. First of all, if you are listening and you are in any kind of organized religion, thank you for even being open and curious enough to hearing something that might feel triggering a little bit. My children are still active LDS members, and so is their dad. So again, navigating this for me, I wanted to always do it with the most respect. And this is how I see it. Being part of that was there's a list, there's a checklist. There is if you do this, here's the paper, here's the program, here's the thing. If you do this and you check all the boxes, then that equals this, right? There's not a lot of intuition and asking yourself because somebody else has already shown you what to do. It's like if someone said, hey, David, if you want to be a successful podcaster, you do all of these things. If you check all these boxes, you're going to be successful. But if your heart and your soul and you, the part of you, isn't part of your podcast, it might fall flat. There might be a little bit of something missing, but you're maybe like, I don't quite know what it is. So for me, I was following the checklist. I was doing all the things. I was going to make it to the top. I was the vice president of the church educational system in college and I was like, I'm going to be the next Sherry Dew. I am going all the way to the top because if I'm in, I am all in. And I followed the formula. I did the things, right? I did everything that I was supposed to do to equal happiness. And one day in my marriage with my 4 kids, I literally put my hands up after pleading and praying and asking for years. I was like, is this it? Like, is this it? Is this the thing? Why don't I feel the way I thought I'd feel? I don't like what's missing. So then I convinced myself that if I just endured till the end, one day I'd be happy. So maybe I wouldn't get it in this life. Maybe it wouldn't happen here, but I was banking on the next life. Okay. So I'll just put in my time here. I'll do the grind. I'll endure the hardship. I don't have to be totally happy here. But if I just keep doing it and keep on the path, then one day I'll be happy. And I said this to a potential therapist at the time. And I said, well, I guess if I just endure to the end, one day I'll be happy. And he goes, you need to get in my office right now. And I was like, okay. So we just started talking about it. And he's like, you can be happy now, Kate. You can be happy now. And this guy, he was an LDS therapist. He's like, you can be happy now. And he really helped me start opening up to this, like, okay, what would happiness look like for me? In the very beginning of this, I still married, still active member of the church. I went on, my sister invited me to come meet her in the Netherlands. And we went Brussels, Bruges, made our way all the way up. I was with her for a week and I was just happy to be there, just happy to be there. And it was the last day we were there and we were shopping and going to get some things to take home. And I had these 2 pots, these 2 vases. One was just a white, plain white, match everything. The other was the blue and white. You know, if you've ever seen that Netherlands kind of pottery or vases, and so I turned and looked at her and I had them both in my hand. I said, which one do you think I should get? And she literally whipped around and she goes, ask yourself. And I was like, whoa, we should probably go eat lunch or something like, okay. So we went to lunch and we got to lunch and we sat there and I said, tell me about that. Like, what did you mean by that? She said, Kate, you don't even know what you want to eat. She said, you haven't had an opinion about anything since we've been here. You don't like, what do you even like? And what I realized in that moment when I went home, David, is that I had completely lost myself in the life that I thought was going to get me the ticket
The obedience
to something better.
Yeah.
And I just started asking myself something as simple as what sounds good to eat. That basic, what sounds good to eat. Up until that point in my life, I thought soup was a ripoff. I'm like, you eat soup and an hour and a half later, you're starving. Like, soup is a ripoff. I eat soup even in the summertime now. I love soup. It warms my body up from the inside. It's nurturing. It's nourishing. It feels good. I feel cozy. I feel warm. I feel held. But I didn't allow myself soup because nobody else wanted soup. And because I felt like, well, I'm going to be hungry again. And so it just started with something that simple, and it really opened up this whole new path for me. So first of all, I would say the difference in being part of the structured religion is that there's not a lot of curiosity. There's not a lot of space to ask questions and be curious because it's already you're already told this is the way it is.
Yeah, or if all the questions are to be answered through scripture, or through other sources that have an agenda to kind of hook you back in.
Right. So then this ask yourself piece that my sister literally gave me this gift a decade ago. Ask yourself. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I've never even heard anyone say that before. Ask myself. Wait, I can do that? That's an option? Okay, I'll start with food. But then what it did is it got me down this other path of like, what feels good for exercise? I was going to CrossFit. I hate CrossFit. My whole body hurt. I loathed it, but it was like, I got to work hard. It's got to be hard. You know, hard is success. Hard is rewarding. Hard. And that's when I switched to yoga. I was like, actually, I'm going to try something that feels different and better for me. But that curiosity opened me up to a lot of new things. And it was like, what feels good to me? Even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else, what feels good to me? So that piece of it is the biggest thing of, are you curious to even asking yourself and listening to yourself and even going there? Because here's the thing, it's harder in many ways. There are mornings I wake up and I'm like, oh, if I just had the script or if somebody could just tell me what to do, that would feel great. I could just be an operator and I could just be a robot and I could just go. But I don't believe that that's where expansion comes from. And I believe that the true opportunity that we have to be the biggest, boldest, highest version of ourselves is not under any construct of religion. I believe that there's a ceiling, right? It's like I could have only gone so far, and then it's like maxed out. And in a lot of ways, I feel like there's a complacency or just like an acceptance that has to happen of like, okay, well, I guess this is it. But the biggest difference is, and I mentioned this earlier, but it comes back to, it's either somebody else has all the answers for you or the answers are within. And that is the biggest difference of are those answers within or are they not? And it's interesting because I have a daughter who just came home from a mission early. And she came home early because everything in her body was telling her, this isn't for me, this isn't for me. And of course, it's like, well, just stay one more week. We'll just stay one more week. Well, how about one more day? And her whole body is going, no, no, no. Right. But she's getting talked into staying. And she's back home. And we're still on this path of like, what do you want? What do you think? She's like, Mom, I just want your dad to make the decision. I just want you to tell me what to do. I'm like, I hear you. I totally get it. And what do you want to do? Like, how does she as a 19-year-old get to practice the thing that took me until I was 35? Right? How cool is that? And also, it's challenging. We were told what to do until we became adults, when to eat, when to go to sleep, who we could hang out with, how long we could hang out, what sports we were even going to play. We're very influenced by our parents. There's like, what are you going to major in? Where are you going to go to school? Who are you going to marry? Where are you going to live? All of those things were heavily influenced. So this journey of stepping outside of any of that and asking ourselves is scary. There's no roadmap. There's no like, here's the formula. And if you do A, B, C, D, E, then you get this. And it has been the most satisfying thing I've ever done in my life. The most satisfying in the end. You know, I can be with myself and I am really great. Like, there's nothing that I need outside of me to complete me or to make me feel whole. Like, I know that I am already that. I'm already that. And a lot of these little pieces come from even the religion, right? Is that we are God.
Yeah.
Right? We are God. Ask and you will get the answer. Which of these churches is true? None. What would that look like now if we were to do that? And the answer is like, for my daughter, don't be on the mission. No, 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 you need to be. She's like, I'm doing the thing. Right? It's an interesting thing, but there's culture and there's, it can really like throw up all the cards in your life, and it can really create a lot of intensity and a lot of high emotions for a long time. And when we just want things to kind of be smooth, there's an illusion that it's smooth, right? But really there's also like a void or an emptiness that I think is underlying.
Yeah, that brings up this point too, where I'm noticing, especially with technology, where we're removing so many barriers for convenience. So like life is becoming so much more convenient, but then at the same time, with that convenience, there is, in my opinion, a potential detriment to the fact that we're not flexing the muscle of having to work through difficult things and figure things out for ourselves. And so it's, I just find this a really fascinating topic. And so you've mentioned earlier about, medicine woman, psilocybin, magic mushrooms, etc. How has that allowed for people, whether it's yourself or the people you've worked with, begin to maybe go inward and begin to trust that internal wisdom, their spirit, which is, in my opinion, connected to everything. I mean, so yeah, can you kind of describe how someone who might be listening, who is kind of on the fence or is feeling a bit lost, or is in, what can this do for people?
I love this question. So I've been working with plant medicine for a long time. And I first found the first time I sat with plant medicine, I felt love and compassion for my ex-husband. And I hated him at the time. I was really mad at him. And I was able to, my heart softened. I had compassion for him. I could see him as this younger version of himself that was just also traumatized and doing the best he could. And that was something that I don't know that I could have ever gotten outside of that medicine giving me that experience ever. The reason I love plant medicine is it takes away the stories. It takes away the beliefs of the things that already exist and it shows us something else that might be possible, something bigger, something expansive, something greater. And there's not it shuts off the mind, right? We are so cerebral and we are constantly filtering things through our mind. Plant medicine gets rid of the mind. The mind is not there to filter through anything. So it really is this spiritual experience. And I would say probably the biggest catalyst to be able to ask yourself and hear what your own intuition and inner wisdom has to say. I worked with this medicine by myself for years and years and years and years and was a life coach. And one day I had this moment where I'm like, you're kind of a fraud. Like you're putting all this stuff out there of like, oh, if you just do this, if you do this, if you do this, then this is what you get, right? Like, but the truth is, I was leaving out a huge piece of that, the catalyst that had gotten me to there,
To there.
right? I had the tools, but also the thing that cracked me open and opened me up was the medicine. So that's why a year ago, I started the Embodied House of Metamorphosis Emergence program to become a legal facilitator and server of this medicine in the United States. And because of that legality, it allows me to talk about it in a way that I feel is very important. And I love that you asked this question because if you are considering, if you are thinking about working with this medicine, know that it is a medicine and it is not just a party, fun, good time thing. You don't know what's going to be activated. You have no idea. I've experienced clients who have come to me that they were with a bunch of friends and they decided that they wanted to, have some fun for New Year's and do some magic mushrooms. And she ended up in a corner having a memory of sexual trauma in her life, right? Like, so first and foremost, get someone who is qualified to help you and support you with this medicine because there are things that come up. And when those things come up, it's a gate. It's an opportunity for you to move through that gate. If your facilitator is not practiced in how to navigate through this, you can come out of the experience being worse off than you were before because you're stuck in the loop. You never made it through that gate. But if you've got someone who's really good, they can help you transition and move through that gate. And on the other side of it is the freedom that you've been wanting your entire life. The second piece of this, and this is how I do this process. And it was completely aligned with what I also found in Metamorphosis, which is why I decided to go with that organization. There's a process in this. There's a preparation where you prepare your four bodies, your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual body for the experience that you have. The experience is the medicine journey. And then there's integration. If you don't prepare, you could still have a good experience, but you're not going to go 4 layers deep. You're not going to go through all of those bodies because you haven't prepared or you know that. Then there's the experience, which is aha, amazing, you know it, which is super cool. But if you don't know how to integrate that into your life in the third dimension, then it's just another aha moment. You're just more wise, you have more wisdom, but you don't have the experience, the action. The action piece and the integration after the medicine, I believe, is the most challenging. And here's why. You went and you had this aha experience in this moment where now you see clearly, but you go back into your world. You go back into the triggers. You go back into those relationships. You go back into that job that you're not fully satisfied in, and you saw that maybe that wasn't the job for you. So now there's more dissonance than there was before because now you know better, but you don't know how to navigate that. So there's a process in all of this. It's not a quick fix. It's medicine. It's a tool. It's an incredible tool, but ultimately you are the medicine. You are the medicine. Everything's inside of you. Psilocybin's a catalyst. But if you're not regularly already showing up for yourself every single day, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you think that after you do medicine, you're just going to automatically have those habits? Not a chance. So being able to prepare by doing things consistently in those four bodies before allows you to already be in the regular practice of doing it after. And that's how you get to process through and really integrate that medicine. So to answer your question, absolutely. If you're being called to this medicine, you are being called to this medicine. It is by far, it's 10 years of therapy in one sitting. It's an expansive thing that like nothing I've ever experienced in my life. And work with someone, work with someone who has been doing this for a long time and really knows how to help you get the maximum benefits out of the experience. You'll get out of it what you put into it. If you're looking for a quick fix, an easy thing, good luck. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can find it for inexpensive and maybe even go out and find it on your own. And if you really want some transformation in your life that lasts, then take it seriously. Research, ask a lot of questions, interview people, ask people about their experience. Don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, I can contest that it's been monumental for me to utilize that to begin to open me up. And, you know, and like you said, there have been times where, um, a lot of things can be shown in those moments and can make a huge impact. But again, if yet there's um, no one really helping you organize and work through it and have a support system, or you don't have anything um, in your life that is allowing for you to kind of work through these things, I can see and have seen that people then use it as a crutch. It becomes, well, I need to go back there in order to feel love again or to feel this. And now it becomes a thing, and it's taking it's completely diverting the purpose. And in a lot of ways too, now it becomes kind of your new idol of sorts that you're trying to get away from in many ways. And so for me, I want to have more awareness of when I do use it, like, how am I feeling? Is this feel right? And there have been times that I've used it in the past where maybe it wasn't the best timing, but I love what you're saying though, because I think it's so important that people realize that this is a catalyst to help maybe expose more things and show them in front of you. But now you need help to help organize what's going on, because you can easily throw that all back in the closet.
100%. There's two things here. I like to think of it as psychedelic surgery. It's like surgery. So if you were going to go in and get surgery, you would prepare, right? You'd prepare for the day of the surgery. And then you would have to take care of yourself in such a way after that the stitches don't rip open, the surgery actually works. If you got knee surgery, right? You don't just leave the knee surgery and go out there and start running tomorrow. There are certain things that you need to do to be gentle with yourself, to recover, to have good recovery. So if you start to think about, using psychedelics as a psychedelic surgery where it literally opens you up,
Ooh, this is good.
then you get to go into recovery, which would also be called integration. The second thing that I love that you brought this up, it's a very smart thing to be aware of. There are many people who leave religion and pendulum swing to a new, quote, I'm doing air quotes, y'all, religion of plant medicine.
Yeah.
It's again seeking something outside of yourself for solutions and answers in a different way. So coming back to, okay, what did you see? What did you learn? Now, how do I, in the third dimension, in my physical body, in this humanness that I am, take that and become it? It's about being it, not just knowing it.
That's where I need to start learning more.
And we all do. That's a good awareness. All of us in everything, anything, whether it's plant medicine or not. It's like, okay, I read that book. I got it. Okay, how is this happening for me instead of to me? Okay, great. That sounds awesome. And then I'm in the moment of like, oh, whoa, I got to practice this. What you don't know is that that restoration took 2 months. That whole process took me months. It wasn't like a quick thing. And so it's a daily practice. It's waking up every day and saying, okay, how do I, you know, my self-care practice that I do every day. It seems basic, right? It's like, you still do that? Yep, I still do that. Been doing it for a decade, still do it. Still fall on and off, still sometimes better than others, right? But that is consistency is what creates the new habits in our lives.
Mm,
And in fact, what we also get to know is in order to create new habit, new behavior, you have to let go of something so that there's room to replace it with something new. So, what are you going to give up? What are you going to let go of? What habits do you want to let go of? And what are you going to replace it with? There's a process of doing that. A lot of people get stuck because they don't understand that there really is a science to this and like a way to go about doing it. Same thing with the medicine, the plant medicine. After you use that medicine, there's specific things that you have to let go of in your life to make room to put that new thing in. And so being able to look at it that way and say, aha, okay, great. So this is what I'm going to take out. This is what I'm going to add. But then you have to practice it because it's not your default. It's not your habit. It's new.
mm. Yeah, one of my I had 2 episodes ago, I did something on death cleaning, and it's all about, not just the physical act of starting to look at the physical objects of your life and starting to curate and keep only what is necessary and things that bring you joy and are functional.
Mhm.
But it's also this internal cleaning of being like, hey, we cram ourselves, whether we know it or not, with so much information on
Mhm.
a daily basis. And then we hold on to our history. And so then we're crammed with so much clutter that we're unable to really fully receive what's coming in, whether it's a new opportunity, whether it's a relationship, or an experience. And so then we're wondering why we don't have energy, why
Mhm.
we need to keep searching for the new pre-workout, or have multiple cups of coffee a day just
Mhm.
to kind of get through the
Yeah.
day. And so for me, like this type of work, and I will emphasize it is work, but is allowed for you to start to cleanse and open up possibility to and room for new things to come in so that
Mhm.
you can actually use
Mhm.
them.
Yes.
And so I love that you brought that up.
Mhm.
And the surgery analogy
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
resonated a
It's a
lot for
good
me.
one, right? And another thing to remember, those of you who are listening, again, thank you. There is a void and an empty space that feels really uncomfortable. When you shed and you let go of something, there's this space that you're now in that you're like, I feel empty. This feels awkward. This is uncomfortable. I don't like it.
Would you almost say it can mimic depression or? Okay.
100%. Yes, 100%. But when you realize and know and expect it, Kate said I was going to feel uncomfortable. This is worse than I ever thought it would be. I'm feeling super uncomfortable. I'm actually really struggling now that I don't have a partner in my relationship. I hate being alone. I hate that all my friends are going to dinner as couples and I don't have anyone to go with. I'm feeling isolated. I'm feeling alone. Yes, amen. You're feeling all of that. And it's by you being alone and having that openness that allows the new partnership in the relationship to come in. But let's not skip over how uncomfortable it is to fill that void, because it is. And it's often the reason why people go back to the self sabotaging behavior or that old relationship or whatever it is. Try to fill it with food, try to fill it with a substance, because that emptiness is so foreign to us because we have been overfilled.
Hmm.
So it literally feels like you're starving and you need to put something in. I need to fill it. So that practice of just being uncomfortable, a quote that I have coined and I love is, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Just go ahead and say it. I am uncomfortable, but I am willing to sit in the discomfort because it is uncomfortable. This is why community matters. This is why we need people in our community who are walking the path to be able to say, I am struggling today. Remind me why I broke up with him. Remind me why I haven't been doing this thing or remind me why I wanted to leave my career and job. Like, I don't have anything right now. Remind me again. And then you have those people in your life to say, yes, I'm here. Let me remind you. And they do. And you're like, okay. I had this happen just 2 days ago. I reached out to a girlfriend. I'm like, remind me about this again. Remind me. She's like, okay. It's not that you're missing that. It's just that you're missing the companionship, or I'm like, okay, yes, thank you. And remind me about this. And then she did. And it's okay, thanks. But the humanness in us, we are human. Doesn't matter how much we know. The humanness in us will fill the void. It will fill the lack. It will fill the space in between. And that space in between is uncomfortable. Most people aren't willing to be in that space in between, which is why we go back or we never do it.
Hmm. So, something I've noticed, there's a picture on your Instagram page that really struck me, and it's really beautiful. Actually, it's a moment where it looks like you're holding someone in comfort, in some sort of maybe a plant medicine ceremony, and so you talking about community, having people to be able to hold you through these tough moments, as well as you being able to have the courage and trust to hold yourself through this. So how does and so how is being held? I was kind of toying with this because you talked about womb healing in an email that and I'm like, I have no idea what womb healing is. But then this idea of like, well, in the womb, you're being held by, your mother. And so can you, first of all, for myself, I don't know what womb healing is. And then also, I feel like a lot of this can coincide with what we've talked about.
Definitely. So, referring and coming back to plant medicine, I was in my own experience with medicine, the one receiving, not holding the space for someone, but I was in the medicine. And at the time, my mom was living with me, and I was fully immersed in this healing journey, in this experience. And I had the thought in the medicine, why doesn't my mom do the work? Like, I just don't get it. She has all the resources, everything around her. And the medicine said she has no one to hold her.
That's
and in
big.
that moment, I was being held by my partner. He was behind me with his arms around me, and we were laying, and I was crying, and I was just feeling the gravity of like, why doesn't she do the work? Like, I don't get it. Come on, mom. And to hear she doesn't have anyone to hold her as I was being held through my own healing was so powerful. So, what I know for sure is that we need to be held. We need to feel like somebody's holding us, whether that means if the doorbell rings, I got it. If somebody calls and a kid needs help, I got you. I am completely holding you. I have got you. You can fully surrender. You can fully soften into everything and let go of any worry, any concern, because you are being held in the physical space, but then also being held, touched, held, right? Like we're human. We need 8 hugs a day. We're not getting that, most of us, but we need to be physically touched and held to exhale and to soften and surrender. So to be held in that way is really powerful. And what I've learned is as I've had others hold me, I now can hold myself. But it has to be modeled to us. Like we have to receive what that actually feels like in order to then go, okay, I know what this is like. I can give this to myself. I can truly hold myself. So being held is sacred. And it's actually one of my greatest gifts is to be able to hold people and let them be whatever they are, whatever you're experiencing. I got you. Like it's my superpower. In fact, I had one psychic tell me once, he said, you're like a blue hole. And I was like, what is that? I don't even know what that is. And he said, it's that big space in the ocean. It's a blue hole where the salt water stays out and there's only fresh water. And it's where all the animals and all the ocean life comes to feed. It's a resource. It's like it's just like never runs out. It's just like this space of like this capacity to be able to just like hold the ecosystem. And and I believe that to be true. I have this gift of being able to hold people in whatever it is that comes up for them. Like I don't there's like I have this gift of like there's no judgment about it. It's just like, okay. I mean, you could tell me anything and I'd be like, okay, let's navigate that. How are we gonna navigate that? Like it is what it is. So I think people can feel that when they're with me. And I create a deep sense of trust. You know, when we were talking about that medicine or whether it's a retreat I'm doing or whatever, I'm working with people long before we ever have the experience because I want to build trust. I want people to know, like, Kate's got me. Like, I can fully fall apart in this moment and she's here. I also have a rule that is if you weren't here, you don't get to know. And that goes for
Mm.
anything and everything. That's if you're sitting at my dinner table and you share something with me, or we're in a coaching space or a medicine space. That's not mine to tell. That's not mine to share. I will empower you in whatever way to help you work through this or get what you need. But I am yours is not, this is not here for me to share. And so that feels great, right? If like it's not going to be repeated, it's not going to be shared. Like people will tell their darkest, deepest secrets of like, I've never told anyone this before. I can't, but it's up. Here it is. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to judge you for it. I've got my own stuff. So that's a part of the being held piece and process too. And knowing that we are all shadow and light. And that's just the wholeness of who we are. So it's, we can hold that. We can let it be. It doesn't need to be fixed. No one's broken. We're just having these experiences. So the womb piece is interesting because when we brought up the shaman experience, after I received the 10 rights of the Moon Ikea, they said, hey, there's an opportunity for the 13th right. It was given by women for women. And I was like, wait, why did we jump from 10 to 13?
Yeah.
And the reason it's 13 is because it goes along with the 13 moon cycles. Okay. So during this learning about the 13th right of the womb, I learned a lot about women and how we cycle and the moon and these different things. And what I learned, which is fascinating, think about this for a minute. So when your grandmother was pregnant with your mom, your egg was in your mom. So on the tiniest, smallest level, but the essence of who you were in that moment for the first time, everything your grandmother felt energetically during her pregnancy with your mom, you felt. And then if you take that even deeper, for the 9 months that your mom was pregnant with you, that was your first home, and everything she experienced, you felt energetically. Was she excited to be pregnant? Was she nervous she was going to have a miscarriage? Did she have other children she was taking care of? Was she financially stressed? How was her marriage? What was happening? We never talk about this stuff. We never talk about it. And then we are born, but we're not born from like zero with no experience, with nothing. We have all of this imprint,
Mm.
all of this
That's
genetic
fascinating.
imprint, this emotional imprint. And then we look back and it's like, how am I just this way? Right. Or like, maybe I have anxious energy and I'm like, I've been anxious my whole life. Where did that come from? Well, ask your mom. How was her pregnancy? Be interesting to find out. So I started studying this because of what I learned with the 13th right of the womb. And right after I finished that process, I invited 7 of my friends up to a cabin in Sundance. And I said, hey, I want to give you this right. Like it's so empowering. And so I started that May, and I've done it for 9 years. I do a retreat every May, and it is a womb healing and activation retreat. And the women come and we create an altar like this table that you have, and we put on there, we bring in things that remind us of the women of the past, the women in our lives now, and we create this space to bring in the energy of all the grandmothers and the mothers and this just like healing, because when we do this work for ourselves, we heal past generations and we also heal future generations. And that's how powerful the womb is. The womb
Mm.
is literal creation. We are always creating. We're either creating from love or fear at the core. Fear is like, nope, I can't do that, right? I can't do that. I might get hurt. I might fail. or whatever it is. They might reject me. I might be too much. I might not be enough. I'm not worthy. Or we create from love. But we are always creating, always creating. You're creating your reality always by either default or intentional, but we're always creating. So when we, going back to this clearing where you have to make space, you have to clear out the space of the womb. And there's a lot of trauma in the womb. Every sexual experience, wanted or unwanted, is there. I have never talked to one female who has not told me that she's had a sexual experience that was unwanted. Even if it wasn't, even if it was consensual, even if she didn't say anything, she was in self-betrayal of, well, I don't really love this, or I don't really like this, but I'm not going to say anything because it's awkward, or I'm just going to wait till it's over, or I'm just going to not go out with him again, or
Wow.
and
Yeah.
and let's also think about the men or the other person that she's with in this moment. Who's talked to him? Who taught him? How does he know? And we put all this pressure on the partner to know, but she's not saying anything. So there's this really interesting thing there with consent that's a whole nother conversation. But we've got I'm going to say two traumatized, whether it's big T or little t, okay? Two traumatized individuals that are exploring sexuality and sensuality together, but no one's ever talked about it because you're not supposed to. But you're just supposed to know what to do. You're supposed to know how to navigate that. How? Why? Who's telling you? Who's teaching you? Right? And we're not communicating because it's awkward, but yet we're supposed to read minds and read body language and know. That's a whole nother, rabbit hole we could go down. But the point is that coming back to the only thing we can control is ourselves. So when we do these clearings and when we do this activation and like shedding and letting go and forgiving and releasing and not holding on to all of that, then we can open it up to like, okay, so now what do I want? And what do I want to create? And how can I be really intentional? And this is why that listening to the intuition and listening to your inner voice, which is all in this area, energetically space of our belly, if you will, or the womb and the solar plexus area in our bodies. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of shame, and there's a lot of guilt that women hold on to, and a lot of, if you believe, and most women believe, that their sole purpose in life is to create life, create babies, and then you can't. And then the belief is I'm wrong, I'm flawed, I'm broken, there's something wrong with me. There's that, all the way to like sexual trauma or all the things. How many pregnancies where it's actually like, I don't want this baby. This didn't work out, the timing. I'm not wanting this. And so then that's the energy that the baby's created in is not being wanted. That was my experience. I'm a love child. My mom had an affair. I didn't know this until I was 40. And my whole life, I felt like I didn't belong. My entire life, I'm like, I don't fit in. I don't belong. And then when I learned that, I'm like, no wonder.
Wow.
So it's all just information, right? And the more we understand the energy that we were created in, then we can go, okay, makes sense why this is my default. Makes sense why I often feel that energy. And I would encourage all of you, go ask your mom, male and female. Go ask your mom, Mom, tell me about your pregnancy with me. How was it? Were you excited? Were you overwhelmed? How was your relationship with Dad? Did you want to be pregnant? What was going on in your financial situation? A lot of us struggle with financial stuff and money. A lot of that came up in the womb.
Something that's coming up for me while you're saying this is I can see how someone listening could use this information and it will validate how they've been feeling for their, in many ways. But rather than use that like to change, they're using that to now play victim, to stay stuck, and to really perpetuate the feelings of inadequacy, fear, hurt, whatever it is. what would you say to someone that brings that up?
The first thing I would say is when your mom was pregnant with you, she was probably just a kid trying to figure it out. She didn't know any better. We don't know how to be parents. We don't know what to do. We're figuring it out, just like we're figuring out how to run businesses or we're figuring out how to do life. There's no manual, there's no handbook. So I would say, first of all, you and everybody else has had some kind of trauma during pregnancy. So you're not alone. It's okay to feel the way that you do, but you being the victim is not going to help anything. It's not going to get you anywhere greater. And we can't keep blaming our upbringing, our parents for our adult circumstances. There has to be a moment that you say, okay, I'm responsible. And this is taking radical accountability, radical accountability. So you can look at it and go, wow, so much makes sense now. So much makes sense. But if you're criticizing and using it as a way to be the victim, then you're expecting perfection from your parent. And I would ask you, are you perfect?
It's unfair.
Because the truth is, we're all just figuring it out. And when you can bring in compassion for the situation, then you will heal from that. It's up for us. I mean, here's the thing. It's the way we come into the world. Everybody has an experience. And I would say that most everyone has had some trauma, even if you got rushed in for a C-section. It's not your mom's fault, but you got rushed in, and that was stressful and that was anxious. And here you come into this world and there's lights and you're pulled out of the womb without going through the birth canal. That's traumatic. That's traumatic. So just like life gives us experiences that feel really hard, and you could be the victim and say, this is happening to me. Or you could say, how'd that happen for me? I would suggest you use the exact same thing in your birth story of, okay, expect it. We all have trauma during the womb. All of us. Could be about money, could be about being really scared, could be about feeling overwhelmed, all of the emotions. But be more of an investigator and curious of like, okay, how can I use this information to know myself better instead of to criticize and judge?
Thank you for that. I was reminded of a woman I was talking to recently, and she was opening up, and um, she teaches cello, and she said something that really stuck with me, which I feel like will parallel what you just said. She said, "Take your frustration and turn it into fascination."
Mm.
And that will enable you now it opens up that curiosity, right? So with the women that you're working with, from your perspective, what are they needing most?
Mm. Most of the women that I'm working with have outsourced everything or most things in their lives, right? It's like someone will come take care of me. Someone will know the answer. Someone else will have the solution for me. And they've disconnected from themselves. And what the women that I work with need to know is everything's inside of you. Everything that you need, you already have within. And learning to trust yourself and get to know yourself is it. And I would say this for men too. You know, there's a process, it's a cycle, it's a process that I use to create self-love. I said this earlier. I think the one thing that we all have in common as humans is we would all like to love ourselves more, right? More self-love, like that would feel good. So how do you get there is the question. It starts with knowing yourself better than anyone else knows you. Knowing your light, knowing your shadow, knowing your sabotaging behaviors, knowing your birth story, knowing your Enneagram, which is a tool I love that tells you how you see the world based off your childhood experience. It's knowing your strengths. What are you good at? How do you naturally thrive? Know what your human design is, which is your energy, how you attract things, how you repel things, how you magnetize. The more you get to know you, then you can say, okay, I'm not asking everybody else what they think or what I should do. I actually know me better than anyone. So you start to navigate your life based off you being the expert of you. Then you can start to accept this is who I am, my light and my dark, my shadow side and the awesome parts about me. Like, this is my whole self. I am a whole human and I can accept me for this. Guess what? I'm not great at strategic thinking. I'm not. I know that about myself. My brain doesn't do strategy, but I am great at vision and I am great at bringing people together. So cool. I don't have to be great at the strategy. I'll go find somebody else that is and we'll collaborate. But knowing that allows me to not try to be something that I'm not and try to be everything. You're not going to be everything. I'm not everything. But what am I? Who am I? What am I good at? What do I enjoy? So the more we can get to know ourselves, then we can accept ourselves. And then that creates self-trust because you start to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, then you love yourself more. And that is a process. It's a big process. And that is as much for women as it is for men. And this comes back to even the beginning of our conversation that everything is inside of you. Everything. You are the medicine. And this is again, even comes back to the religious piece of like, it really goes from everybody or somebody else having all your answers that you have this for yourself. It's a completely different way of doing things than
Hmm.
how it's been structured and thought.
I mean, you've kind of answered this next thought because I was going to ask you about men.
Mhm.
What are you seeing from your perspective that men are
Mm,
needing most? And
mm.
I mean, you've touched a
Yeah,
little bit on that,
some.
but I'd like for you to, yeah,
I,
elaborate.
Men need permission to feel. Men need permission to know that just because you're masculine and male doesn't mean that you don't have all 82 emotions. Men need permission to not have to have it all figured out and to just
Hmm.
know what to do. There's a lot of blame, and a lot of criticism on men. A lot. It's a lot to hold. It's a lot to hold. You're just this little boy that now has to grow up and like know how to take care of a family and
Hmm.
have all the answers.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot. Men need a soft place to land. And women in partnership, this is why the divine masculine needs the divine feminine. Because as the divine feminine rises, the divine masculine heals. And when I talk about the divine feminine
Yeah.
rising, I'm not saying we become masculine and put on a pantsuit and walk into a meeting and stand at the head of the boardroom table and be in our masculine. No, where's the softness? Where's the gentleness? Where's the feminine able to hold the masculine because she's not triggered by his insecurity? So, as we do the internal work for ourselves to hold ourselves, then I'm okay if my partner can't hold me all the time because he's in his own thing right now. And instead of responding when he comes at me with something to like, you're not going to talk to me that way. What if instead I could be like, oh, he's in his shadow right now and that's okay. Hi, babe, what do you need? How can I support you right now? That's
That's
different.
huge.
I think every man needs the nurturing and that he didn't get from his mom. I think every man has a mother wound in some way. It's not the responsibility of his female partner, but understanding and knowing that that exists can create more compassion. Um, yeah, I I started my work with women because I'm a female because I figured it out for women. I have as many men that I'm coaching as I do women. And I had to really shift that because I thought, why are all these men coming? Why are all these men attracted to wanting to work with me? I think number one, men like one-on-one. They go deeper when they're one-on-one. Women like groups, usually. Women like community, other women. But I also think that men also need a soft space to land and they need a place to fall apart and to just like, ah, okay, great, thanks. I feel better. I'm going to go, you know, do what I do now. But that's not given. There's a lot of like men got to hold it together. You got to have it all figured out. That's a lot. That's a big burden to carry.
Yeah. Well, not only are the expectation is we got to hold it together, but we got to do it right.
Oh, yeah. And you should just know.
Yeah. Don't fuck up.
Yeah.
Because if you do, well,
Yeah.
then,
Hmm.
you're going to be completely just ridiculed, shamed, blamed.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah. And I'm so happy that this type of work is accessible to people, even though people might not even be aware. And that's why I love, being able to at least share what is a possibility for people, and whether they start to move on their work now or it's years from now. For me, like planting seeds so that
Mhm.
people can begin to just show up better for themselves first, and then that's just going to completely echo out into all
Mhm.
their other relationships. And so that is a big goal of mine when it comes to just awareness
Mhm.
and being a mirror. I just want to be a mirror back to a listener. Be like, okay, how are you feeling right now? What is your relationship with yourself? Because I don't know if a lot of people spend much time, or they want to, because it's uncomfortable. It's not pretty. But to me, the most beautiful thing is the times that I've been able to fall apart.
Mhm.
And that is, and to be actually held by other men. Like that is incredible. So
Yeah.
um I love to end on this question for people, which is, for all the topics we've discussed, with what do you feel you hope will be the something that people will take away that's most important from your perspective?
Mhm. Well, the first thing is that you're not broken and you don't need to be fixed.
Mm,
It's more about self discovery than even personal development, right? It's like discovering who you are, learning about who you are, and that it's an inside job. It's an inside job. It's not for anyone else to tell you, give you, help make it all better. If you're not happy and satisfied in your relationship, bring it inward. What can you do to feel better within yourself? We can't pour from an empty cup, but we've been taught that self care is selfish. And what if instead you saw it as, the more I pour into me, the more I nourish myself, the more I take the time for me, then when my partner, when my child, when my employee, when my friend is falling apart, I don't have to get triggered by it or frustrated by it, because I am full and I can say, tell me more about that, and listen. And what if we don't try to fix it? What if we can just listen, because we have the capacity to do that, because we've already filled ourselves up, because we're not at a deficit, and because we're not depleted? We don't have to jump into the mud with them, but instead you can just hold that. That is what it means to hold people. So hold yourself in giving yourself what you need. And the takeaway would be, ask yourself, what is one thing I can do right now to feel better? One thing. Might be go for a walk, might be drink a glass of water, might be call a friend, might be close my eyes for 5 minutes, right? What's one thing you can do to feel better? Or to go even deeper, and this is an internal practice of asking yourself and listening to your intuition, you would close your eyes, you would take a deep breath, exhale, and ask yourself, what do you need, sweetheart? What do you need? And that is tender, because what comes is you telling you, what do you need? What do you need? And it's simple and easy. And sometimes the answers are like, oh, that's what I need. It's like, okay, thanks. And then you just start to learn, what's your inner voice telling you? What's it teaching you? It's a lot easier than it sounds. It just requires actually showing up.
that's so beautiful. For anyone that's listening that is unfamiliar with you, where could they find you? If they're interested in working with you, where can they look you up?
I am online, social media, Instagram is at Kate Strong World, and I'm in my DMs. That's me you're talking to, so send me a message. I also can be found on Instagram, like I said, and Facebook, Kate Strong. Have a website. It's katestrongworld.com. Yeah,
Okay. Well, I loved our conversation today.
same.
I value when people come in and spend time to share their information, their wisdom. So I just want to extend my gratitude for you doing that. So,
Yeah.
and I would love to have you on again because as you're talking, I'm thinking there's going to be some part twos to this. Like there's a lot of rabbit holes we could go down. So I definitely would love to make sure that to have you on because, and anyone listening to, please leave a comment or if there is a topic that resonates with you, like I would love for us to be able to collaborate again and just be able to help others and allow them to get connected with you if possible.
Thank you. I would love to be back on. I could, talk about this for hours and hours and hours. It's part of my world. It's part of my life. I am you. You are me. We are all in this together.